in Hungary, we believe that at all costs we should avoid a confrontation with NATO, because in this case, Hungarian soldiers also have to be involved in this fighting, very far away from their homes, with not that much of understanding why they have to do that.
Įsivaizduokite žmogų, kuris mato pasaulį be filtrų. Ne taip, kaip jį pateikė CNN ar Euronews. Ne taip, kaip diktuoja politinės deklaracijos ar diplomatiniai mandagumai. O taip, kaip yra iš tikrųjų, su visais nepatogiais klausimais, su visomis ribomis, kurias kiti vengia net paminėti. Toks yra mūsų šios dienos svečias – Sandor Seremet. Jis iš tų, kurie nebijo pasakyti garsiai to, ką kiti šnibžda tyliai. Kilęs iš Užkarpatės, jis pažįsta Rytų Europos pulsą ne iš knygų, o iš gyvenimų. Dirbo Teroro namų muziejuje, Budapešte, studijavo Prahoje, o dabar dirba analitinėme centre, konsultuojančiame Viktoro Orbano vyriausybę ir dalyvauja konferencijose bei seminaruose JAV. Kitaip tariant, jei nori suprasti, kur pasaulis juda, kalbėkis su žmogumi, kuris stovi užkulisiuose. Šį vakarą riba nebus patogi. Kalbėsime apie tai, kas verda po paviršiumi. Žodžio laisvės ribas, migraciją, deep state, Krymą, Vengrijos santykius su Europos Sąjunga ir net apie tabų temas, kurių dauguma vengia. Čia neklausime, ar tai tiesa, čia ieškosime, kas slypi tarp eilučių. Sėskite patogiai, nes kai Sandoras pradeda kalbėti, ribos tarp to, ką žinote, ir to, kas yra iš tikrųjų, ima tirpti. Ir būtent ten, toje erdvėje, tarp žinojimo ir smalsumo, gimsta laida, kurios praleisti negalite. Studijoje Sandor Seremet.
Hi, Seremet. Thank you for coming to this podcast. So, I have very strange questions here. Some of them you will like, some of them you don't. Let's see. So, yeah, in Lithuania we have really a strange question. Who is Crimea? And there is only one safe answer. Say anything else and you'll be in trouble. It's in Lithuania like that. So, Sandor, tell us honestly, who is Crimea really?
Well, the official position of Hungary is that we support Ukraine's territorial integrity and sovereignty. Under the current circumstances, the geopolitical reality shows us that it is under full Russian control at this time. And we don't see how this territorial dispute can be solved. So we understand that there is a serious conflict of interests. From one point, this is Russia, and then we have the geopolitical realities that we see on the ground. On the other end, we have the international law and the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine. So, of course, the ideal version would be that the territorial integrity is back again, the international law is prevailing, but we have to see and have to wait how this bloody war will end and see what solution the real stakeholders will come up with. So let me stick with that we support the territorial integrity. The geopolitical realities are somehow blurring these lines at this point.
Okay. But historically, Crimea is neither Russian or neither Ukraine.
Well, if we would like to count to how many state formations and by how many empires Crimea was possessed, then probably our podcast would last at least 2 hours.
Okay, so here in Lithuania, every headline says that Russia will attack NATO. But is that real? Or just a fear to keep Europe nervous?
A little bit of both, I would say. I think we have to a little bit clarify our vision over here. What I mean is that if you look up the newspapers or listen to experts talking in the media, then there is in one sentence you can see two conditions. On one hand, everybody says that we just need to push a little bit more because Russia is so weak that it can't even deal with Ukraine and it will collapse. On the other hand, Russia is the biggest threat that Europe faces. So these two statements are a little bit contradicting, but they exist together very often, very easily. In my opinion, Russia might have the intentions, but in my opinion, doesn't have the capabilities to withstand a full-scale conflict with the NATO. Not only from point of view of manpower or equipment, but also economically. Russia is 140 million people. Now only the European Union has at least 400 million people. And then we also have to add the US and all this war machine that the NATO accumulated throughout the Cold War is not something that Russia could withstand. So, in my opinion, if Russia and the NATO would run into a clash, then it would end very badly because both NATO, both Russia possesses enormous amounts of nuclear weapons. And if there is any reason in this world, and there are at least some reasonable people behind those red buttons, then they would probably avoid those scenarios when they have to use them. So I don't think that Russia would dare to attack NATO. But, I don't have my tactical crystal ball here to which I can see the future. But let's hope it will not happen. We have to be prepared for be able to defend ourselves. That is totally necessary, and this is something that Europe needs.
In our country, in Lithuania, so it's like this narrative that soon Russia will check the defenses of NATO if they are real or something.
Oh, I can understand this because, in Hungary, we have a little bit different perspective because between the border of Hungary on the very east of Hungary and the border of Russia, there's like a couple of thousands, at least, like almost 2,000 kilometers distance. So and we have the Carpathians that is very hard to breach, right? The different situation is here in Lithuania, which is way closer to Russia. So the fears are different, and the approaches are different. So perhaps in this region, these kind of fears are more vital. In Hungary, we believe that at all costs we should avoid a confrontation with NATO because in this case, Hungarian soldiers also have to be involved in this fighting. Very far away from their homes with not that much of understanding why they have to do that. So yeah, different, geography matters.
Okay.
From different places, we see differently the world.
So we have Ukraine, we have Zelensky. How long do you think he will stay in charge of Ukraine?
Well, this is a very good question. Again, something that we have to see the future. If you look at the media, that is media outlets on the West that became very critical towards his actions within Ukraine, with this conflict with the anti-corruption institutions that were basically replaced from the independent.
Yeah, that was a very bad decision.
Yeah, it was actually not well thought through decision. Well, on one hand, he was trying to communicate that he's trying to fight the Russian influence because some of the agents of these institutions, in his opinion, were working for the Russians. But these institutions were established after Maidan, and they were very tightly linked to the Democrat administration in the United States, to the State Department, and they were basically providing, if not control, but at least they provided a vision to Ukraine's partners what's going on in Ukraine. So by eliminating the independence of these institutions, many claim that the reason behind this in Zelensky's head or Zelensky's team's head could have been to avoid this sort of an influence through these institutions. It may have be true or may have not be true, but we see from the reaction of Ukraine's partners that this was a serious concern to them about how long he can stay in power.
Do you think he is legally in power now?
Well, look, the Constitution says that the presidential term is 5 years, but it lasts until the next president is taking up the charge, right? And then comes the law on the elections, which says that in wartime, elections cannot be held. So there's a contradiction or conflict between the law and the Constitution. So on one hand, those who support Zelensky, they say that according to the law, no elections can be done. Those who try to criticize him, they claim that the term is 5 years, and if there's no president, then the speaker of the Verkhovna Rada has to take over the charges. But this is a dispute of legal experts in Ukraine. So from logical perspective, if they cannot hold the elections and there is no new president who would take over the place, it seems that his term can be prolonged at this point. But on the other hand, we don't really see any challengers. So there are no figures that could just jump out from the hat like the rabbits from the magician's hat to replace him, because it's quite hard to find a person who can be president of Ukraine. First of all, he has to be okay.
There is one, I guess. They're preparing Zaluzhny.
Well, the commander, the previous commander-in-chief, he's now in London, the ambassador, but he did not announce any political claims yet. So there is no team behind him who would build up a party or something. He's popular. He is very popular, without a doubt. He has very high numbers and popularity, but there is, at this point, nobody behind him. So if there will be a president, a new one, then it means that he has to be accepted by the Western partners, and he has to be also okay for the Ukrainian society. And we don't really see any personality who could just jump in.
Okay, so another question is, Ukraine, Hungary has a border with Ukraine, right? It's Transcarpathia. Yeah. So nobody talks about that, but actually, is it safe there?
Well, the region itself, Transcarpathia, or in Ukraine it's called Zakarpattia, we call it Karpatoy or Subcarpathia. It is basically one of the safest territories in Ukraine. Throughout the entire war, there was very few drones or missiles.
Many Hungarians live there.
Yes, there is a significant Hungarian community. Well, according to the census of 2001, it's more than 150,000 people. Now it's way less. Prior to the war, it was around 120,000. Now, with the war, many people cannot go back to Transcarpathia. Many people left. It is now below 100,000, maybe closer to 80,000. But it's still there. They're still there. Many of them are serving in the army. The institutions of Hungarians over there are working. They're taking their part in the humanitarian initiatives. So, for example, the region, Transcarpathia, became some sort of let's say, a hub for humanitarian aid that comes from the bordering countries, like from Romania, from Slovakia, from Hungary as well. So it takes active part in it. But at this point, thanks God, it's safe, and there is not that many air attacks that would reach that region.
So we talked a bit about Ukraine's corruption. Some say it's legendary. What do you think? There is a huge corruption there?
Well, corruption is a traditional problem in Ukraine. It was there for a long time. It would not be fair to say that Ukraine never tried to attempt to fight it or to change it. And there is some success in it. So, for example, it's not that likely that some low-level officials can be bribed that easily than it was like in the 90s or early 2000s, right? So there is a...
But we see headlines with a huge amount of cash just caught.
Yeah, but these are higher levels, So the big cash comes then when somebody takes the risk, right? So on lower level, the risks are too high for lower cash. In bigger levels, sometimes it's worse to take a risk. The thing with this, sometimes we can also use the phrase institutionalized corruption or something, means that, for example, the state orders for, building the roads or providing food for the army or building some reconstructional works. On these certain players can make some money. And this is something that is has been very criticized, not only from outside, but it also creates tensions within Ukraine. So again, it's all about the levels. On those places where big money can be done, unfortunately, things happen. On lower levels, in the interpersonal level, it's there, but it's not that severe anymore. I mean, but it's still a huge problem. It's still
we send a huge amount of money, like war aid to Ukraine, and we have talks that there is huge corruption and not only a small amount of money.
Well, the problem is the accountability, in my opinion. So it's very hard to take account on how things are going on.
So, and what about Hungary? Is it really any cleaner, or just better at hiding it? Because we heard various things, that it's also a corrupt country.
That's a very good question. Well, if there is a country in which we are having not such good relations, the first thing that we try to address is whether it is corrupt or not. Again, it's all about levels. In my opinion, in Hungary, the question of corruption is addressed very strictly. So the measures were taken long ago to try to avoid mass corruptions. In my opinion, there is no state on the globe that can be 0% corruption-free. There might be some cases. Good thing that in my daily job, I do not have to deal with domestic affairs. I'm focusing on foreign policies, which is a huge blessing that I don't have to be.
Yeah, but I can tell you, that we have here in Lithuania, we have really wild stories about Hungary, and Viktor Orban.
For example,
some says that the government there takes all the companies and nationalizes them. Is it true at all?
I'm not aware of nationalizing.
Taking all the companies, like if you don't, let's say some company, it's not liked by Orban, so we can take it.
Well, let me put it this way. If this would be the case, then probably Hungary would not be that active on FDI, and companies like Rheinmetall or Samsung, Audi, Mercedes would not set up factories in Hungary.
Yeah, but that's international ones. Maybe I'm talking about more local ones.
I'm not aware of these cases. Well, there might have been conflicts of interest between players on the economic market, but as I said, I'm not that deep in.
I'm just telling you what we hear in Lithuania. So,
as you know, a fly in a distance of 2 kilometers until it reaches your point can turn into a monster.
Yeah, sure. So Hungarians are famous for their sharp humor. Let's test it. Yeah? Okay. Are there any good Hungarian jokes about Lithuania? How do you see us?
I cannot find a particular joke about Lithuania, but I can recall a very old Hungarian sort of a rap song which goes through the history of Hungary. And there is a quote that there was a time when we had 3 C's, referring to the Jagiellonian times when Jogaila was the king of all these things. And we had no tourists neither then, neither now. But particularly to the Lithuanians, I don't really know that we have any good jokes that would relate to the Baltic area or to the Nordics.
Okay, so let's talk about USA a bit. So 750 billion, Trump, von der Leyen, one of the biggest energy deals in history, just recent one, yeah? Fuel, power, politics, everything together. What do you think about this deal? What do Hungarians think of this deal, the last one?
Well, it's a very fresh one.
Yeah.
The first thought that pops into someone's mind that this is a huge amount. First of all, we have to take into account whether the United States are capable to deliver such amounts of energy to the continent, because the exports that the United States provides now are way lower than than the proposed amounts are. So probably there will have to be a significant raise in production. And then we also have to understand that it's not that easy to transport all that through the Atlantic.
We have no pipe.
There's no pipe on the bottom of the Atlantic Sea, and we also don't have such a great fleet that would carry that amount that is proposed. So at first point it's very astonishing. Like, oh my God, that's a huge amount. How we can get that, and taking into account that this is also like almost 3 times more than the annual trade turnover with US. So it's going to be challenging not only for Europe but also for the US to deliver.
Yeah, and we even laugh about it because there is no pipe, so we have to transport it, and together we have this green course. so actually, to transport the ships here, not so green.
Exactly. The bad thing about the ships that the regulation of their CO emission is not that strict like with other internal combustion engine powered vehicles. Mm-hmm. So this is also a very good point that you made. That's how green it will be if we will have to transport through the Atlantic this enormous amount of energy. Not to mention the dimensions of drilling. But Donald Trump is famous for being a deal breaker. He likes to announce big victories, and for his electorate, it seems this is a big thing that he can carry back home. On the question how it will work on practice,
Yeah, but actually, do you think it's a good deal for Europe Union?
I'm not sure, but on the other hand, we also have to understand that Europe is very eager to keep Donald Trump's America in the security architecture of Europe. And it seems that to do so, the United States must be interested in remaining. So maybe these agreements serve multiple purposes. And as I said, it might look at this point very, very astonishing and very shocking with these huge amounts. But we say in Hungary that the test of pudding is eating. So we have to see how the deal is going to start and how it will work on the at least short term and mid term. And then probably we're going to have to do the calculus and see whether we were able to reach these numbers or not.
Yeah. To some, Trump is a hero who will save America and maybe even Europe. To others, it's like house in a red tie. Which is it for you?
Again, a little bit of both. Many believed and were convinced that if Donald Trump will take the presidency in the United States, he will just shake the geopolitical order and will break a peace deal. He will be able to make America great again. Others are believing that, or believed that he will be the chaos that you mentioned, that he will come and what he believes is reshaping. Other would believe that this is just destroying the existing order. I think the fact that Donald Trump became the president for the second time is just I would say a little take of fresh air in the international political system. He has a very unorthodox approach to many problems. Some of them were successful, some of them were not. He's not even a full year in chair. I would say that it would be way better to measure his accomplishments or failures around half of his term. What I can say certainly from my perspective, that he avoids the traditional ways of making deals. He's breaking them from I don't know. He just feels it in the guts, and then he believes that this will be good or this will not be good. Let's try it, and we will see what the outcome is going to be. And in my opinion, we are now in the phase when he is. Let's try to do this. Let's try to do that. Let's try to do this and that, and we'll see where we can succeed. So this might seem as a chaotic approach, but I think with the time when they will do their own due diligence of their attempts, they will probably pick, or he will probably pick, a couple of main lines on which he can continue, and those that are not successful probably going to fall off.
Actually, I think, me personally, that Trump does a really great job, but for America only. So actually, he works for America.
Well, that's his job.
Yeah. And all these deals are actually really good for America, but we live in Europe.
Yeah, well, again, if I may add something. So those who believe that much in Trump or awaited his second coming as a savior or just a reshaper, they also have to understand that he is hired to be the president of the United States. And his primary job is to serve the interest of his electorate and his country. Maybe there's a time that, maybe we should start to deal with our own things and trying to settle the things around our houses on our own. Mm-hmm. Well, not with breaking ice with anyone, just saying that with cooperation with the key players to do the things that we have to do.
In Hungary, there is one more name that constantly keeps popping up. It's George Soros.
Mm-hmm.
To some, he is mastermind, some pulling the strings everywhere in the world. To others, it's like a villain. So what's Soros' real role in Hungary? It's a kingmaker, scapegoat, something in between?
Well, there was a time when the institutions established by George Soros' foundations, they had a certain influence on the civil society and through this on the political processes, not only in Hungary, but in other regions as well. And around 2016 and from that, there was a serious shift in the policies where the influence and the room for maneuvering of these institutions or organizations funded by these funds were basically pushed out of Hungary. He, in the Hungarian perspective, has the capabilities and has the connections to influence political processes in the regions of the world in which he's interested in. But at this time, well, he's quite old and he moved back from the active
He has a son?
He has a son.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, they say that the apple doesn't fall that far away from the tree. Me personally, I'm not following his master activities that much. I'm certain that he still has the media empire that can shape the public opinion, and there are partner institutions and partner businessmen who run media groups around the world. They might have some positions, but I think at this time we see such a turbulent time in the world that I think his room is a little bit smaller now than it used to be before the war, for example.
Mm. Here in Lithuania, also we have Orban portrayed very negatively. Actually, it's like disruptor, rebel in Brussels. So what's one thing about Orban the media never tells us? Maybe you know.
One thing that the media doesn't tell about him? Well, his position is very clear and I would say persistent for a long time. He's rooting for more sovereign approaches of the nation states, meaning that in certain cases or in certain domestic issues, the nation states may have a higher level of independence or maneuvering room rather than the European Commission proposes to. He does have some opposing positions to the European Commission, it comes to, for example, the war in Ukraine. There's a little bit different approach in Ukraine, but Hungary was saying about rooting for immediate ceasefire from day one before it was cool. Now we are all supporting this position of unconditional ceasefire in Ukraine. Of course, it takes two to tango, and the other part of tango don't really want to tango, but whatever. So in my opinion, he is that pain in the lower back that disrupts the lines that are very comfortable for the European Commission and those states that are very comfortable with this line. As I mentioned in the beginning, that geography matters. And for example, what's very important for Lithuania, or something that is more easily can be solved in Lithuania, can be more hardly solved in Hungary, or from this position, something else can be very much important in Hungary that is not a problem here. So this also comes to the question of energy, for example, right? Hungary does not have a sea, so we cannot build an energy terminal on the Danube or on the Lake Balaton, right? If we would have a sea, then probably we would have more diverse possibilities to work on the diversification, which we do actually. Hungary has I think it's done its homework quite well on the energy diversification. So coming back to your initial point, I think picturing him as you mentioned, the rebel in Brussels is not necessarily the most precise. He is a pro-Hungarian politician who tries to improve the position of Hungary in the palette and tries to make the Hungarian voice a bit more stronger over there. And this takes conflicts.
Is he liked in Hungary? Because, from our perspective in Lithuania, it looks like, Orban is portrayed like a dictator, close to Lukashenko or Putin, not like equally, but something like that,
Well,
is it?
There was a number of elections that in a row that his party have won, and there were no doubts about the legitimacy of these elections. So there were even no attempts from the biggest critics of Hungary and his policies. No one doubted or questioned the legitimacy of the elections that he have won. Of course, as in any normal country and any normal society, there are layers of society who are not satisfied with his policies. They are following other agendas from point of view of family values or foreign policy, approach to the war in Ukraine, for example, or relations with the Eastern countries like Central Asia or China or the South Caucasus or even Russia. So there are groups of politicians, there are groups of public personas who are not liking him. That's their right to do so. The other question is that if you're looking at this from Lithuania, then most probably you will hear their opinion more and not those who are okay with him.
But actually, from Lithuania, it looks like Orban is like a man who always gets what he wants. Is there anyone in Hungary who can tell Orban no?
Good question. Well, I don't know how he works in his office and cabinet and what are the power balances within his team. But in my opinion, he is well respected among his colleagues, and he can adjust his position if the proper proofs and proper explanations are being delivered. But again, that's what I can suspect. Luckily, I'm not dealing with internal policies.
Is he safe in Hungary? Because we have one bad example, like shocking attack on Slovakia's Fico. And what about Viktor Orban?
Yeah, well, that was a very tragic and shocking event that happened to Prime Minister Fico. Well, I do hope and do believe that the Prime Minister is safe in Hungary. I mean,
There were no some attacks, threats?
not that I know of. Not that I know of.
Okay. People whisper about some kind of deep state, a hidden power which pulls strings everywhere in the world behind the scenes. Is it a fantasy? How do you think?
I think this is a little bit over-exaggerated. There is a term that we can use for this, which is called path dependency. So if there are certain things that we are comfortable with and they were going on for a long time, people get their positions, their jobs. It's very deeply linked with the economic interests and stuff like that. And when you try to change something in this, then it leads to multiple consequences on many levels. Imagine a train that consists of 50 wagons, right? We already had a joke about the trains. You know, it goes on a certain speed for a certain time, and you cannot just switch the direction in it because it has a natural momentum that will push it forward. So in order to make the change in these policies or to break the deep state, we just need to wait until this train slows down, and then it can take the turn. By this, I mean that certain policies in the bipolar world, then unipolar world, or now they're saying that this multipolar world, we believe that the changes cannot come because the deep state controls many things. But in my opinion, we are just not patient enough because, you know, we have one life, which is like 70 years, 80 years. But on the scale of history, what is 80 years? Like an hour or just a page in the book? So sometimes like real changes take several pages in the book.
Yeah, but actually, even Trump talks about some kind of deep state which he fights. Is it a political theater or something more?
No, I think this is this path dependency. They're well-built systems that were focusing and aiming on a certain political, international, foreign political goal, and everybody was comfortable with it. Entire industries are built around it, and when you just try to turn it around or switch it, of course it will resist because, you know, people's jobs, economies are dependent on it. We can call it deep state because it's very easy to.
It's a good slogan.
It's a good slogan for that. But I think this is just the interconnectivity of or interlinkage of political interest, economic interest, and the way how the world functions. So again, to make a 180-degree turn from one step to another will naturally cause resistance. And I think Donald Trump is facing this resistance. But if he will be persistent on what he's doing, I think he will be able to do this turn. First, on his first term, he wasn't able to do so. Many say that because of his team was not prepared. But now we see that
it's a good team at the moment.
that he was preparing for this for a longer time, and the people who he was picking for this team are not necessarily people from the old system, or they were not that much in key positions in those systems, so they can be the fresh blood to make these turns. But again, it takes time. It takes time and effort.
Let's talk about more about Hungary. You know. So Hungary is betting big on family. So actually, it's a good tax breaks, incentives, support. Is it working? Are these policies actually bringing more babies?
Well, there is a growing birth rate.
It's growing.
Well, the amount of babies born is getting higher, but it's still the demography is challenging. I'm not a specialist on demographic issues, but certain policies working well. There is a policy towards the support for homes for bigger families, tax reductions for big families, for mothers who can, if they have a second child, they don't have to pay the income tax. this gives certain improvements to the families, but again, these are long-term projects. So to get the results and to be able to measure the real results of these initiatives, we have to look at them from a distance. Well, I don't like to use the term long-term because I don't know if you're familiar with the works of the economist Keynes, the one who made the New Deal in the big depression in the United States. Well, he was telling that it works on long term, but on long term we all going to be dead. So I do believe that these steps that are being taken to improve the situation for the families are important and necessary. But we only will be able to measure their success when some time is going to pass on. I'm not saying an entire generation, but at least a couple of years to see how the society and how the families reacted to them.
Hungary keeps talking about sovereignty, but is it just maybe a political slogan or something Hungarians truly feel in their hearts?
Well, the Hungarians were always a little bit rebellious, let's say this way. This would put it this way. So in the Soviet era, they were the funniest or the happiest barak in the Soviet world. Or people also say that this is the goulash communism. Prior to that, when Europe was Catholic and then the Protestantism came, then the Hungarians were not just simply Protestants, they became Calvinists. And I could go on with the examples for a long time, especially that we were coming from the Uralic territories, we have a different language. We are in the middle of the Slavic German Sea. So we are a little bit outsiders, and probably to keep ourselves running, we have to be a little bit pushy. What comes to sovereignty and this communication that's being used for this sovereignty, I think this is genuine in one sense, but we also have to understand that Hungary is well aware of the limits of its space for maneuver because we are members of the EU and we are members of the NATO. And I would like to emphasize that we are dedicated members of these organizations.
I will have a question about that too.
I was sure that it will come. So we would like to do our policies in a way that serves the Hungarian national interest the best, but is not breaching our obligations that are put on us by being members of these great and huge organizations. So I'd probably come to this. So there are affairs like, as I mentioned, the energy security, for example. And we are not the only ones in the region who are having a little bit different approach to that. Other thing that who is more vocal and who is less vocal about these things. But I believe that many of our neighboring countries, or not even neighboring countries, are very comfortable with the rebellious Hungarians because they don't have to speak up. So, for example, if you're opposing something, okay, the Hungarians did it, so we're fine.
Are you free? Do you have freedom there? I'm talking about, can you talk bad about Orban, for example?
Well, there is a quite significant amount of media outlets that are quite critical to the government.
But what is some Hungary's news media law, some kind that sparks debate?
You mean the media law of 2011?
There's something, yes. Supporters say it's a good because they stop hate, but critics claim that crush free speech.
Well, if I'm aware, I mean, if that's the law that you're talking about, the one that was adopted in 2011, there were some points that were related to hate speech and all these things that cannot be applied, but these are also relevant in other countries as well. And by the media, or at the media, we approach the French model of the media, which means that 30% of airtime goes to the government, 30% to the biggest party, and 30% for the opposition. Having the airtime, for example, this is regulation for the state-owned media. And according to the statistics, but I haven't looked at them for quite a long time, I was close to these topics back in the early 2010s. but I haven't looked at that for a while. But if this is the law that you're mentioning, the one that comes from 2011, then it is proportionate, and it was adopting the French model of the public.
Actually, let's have a bit broader discussion. So where does free speech end and the hate speech begin?
Well, that's a very good question. Well,
it sounds simple until you try to draw the line, you know.
Yeah, that is true. The same depends about other freedoms and then security, right? So, for example, if you go to Ukraine, just a quick example, there are many media outlets and certain parties that ceased functioning due to security reasons, because they were either caught or they believed so to be involved in spreading Russian propaganda or working together with the Russians.
Yeah, but actually it's very comfortable. You can always say that, oh, you are spreading Russian propaganda and you need to be closed.
Well,
I am called here like I'm spreading Russian propaganda, which I never do.
But what I was trying to say with this, so you can use certain topics that can be the red lines, and if these red lines are actually or supposedly crossed, then you can act in some way and pretend that, or not pretend, to say that this is due to security or due to avoidance of hate speech. I think that in Hungary, these things are more or less okay, because, as I said, there's a wide range of media outlets that are critical to the government. There are like podcasts. There are also like online portals that are very popular, and people are reading them. People are going out on the streets, and then they can demonstrate their positions. So I think it works. But where does the freedom of speech ends and where hate speech starts? Well, my personal opinion is that if one can speak critical about something or someone without assaulting the person's dignity or his beliefs or feelings, then the criticism can be used. But we have to understand that there's no one should assault, insult, or attempt to diminish someone's dignity just because someone's opinion is different. So.
Yeah, but it's a hard topic because okay, so Hungary just banned pride parades, something like that. Yeah. So actually, it's not a free speech.
Yeah, but there was more than a few 100,000 parades just a couple of weeks ago, and it went okay. There is a law on child protection or protection in minors that declares, if I'm not mistaken, that the access to LGBTQ plus propaganda or content must be kept away from minors.
So actually, they abandoned school, something.
If I'm not mistaken, in the schools there's a regulation that if classes or information like this has to be delivered, then the parents have to agree to that. So it cannot be like an obligatory class like literature, but if there should be a class, for example, I know the school decides that they're going to introduce, sexual education or whatnot, then if the parents agree to that, it can go. But first the parents has to be asked. But I'm no expert on this. Just a quick example. If you go to a bookstore in Hungary, there are books that have this type of content, but they're on the bookshelves in film.
Yeah, okay.
So you can take it off, you take home and you use it. But if you walk there with your 4-year-old, and if it takes off the shelf, he can't. So
actually, they look like it's like no propaganda, no LGBTQ propaganda.
No propaganda.
Like with cigarettes, it should be closed.
Yes. So exactly, this is a very good example. So it's like with the cigarettes. It cannot be advertised, but you go to the store and you buy it.
What about migration policy? It also divides Europe.
Oh, it does a lot.
It's like some sees that it's like last line of defense for culture, and Hungary, it's very protective for their culture.
Yeah, but Hungary is also being very much criticized for that. Mm-hmm. So, for example, the migration policies of Poland, for example, or Lithuania, when they have this protected border with Belarus, where the migrants are being considered as element of hybrid warfare conducted by Russia, there is one approach. And then on the southern border of Hungary, there is another approach because it is more about the human rights element of this. And for this, Hungary is being criticized because from 2015, when the migrant crisis kicked in, if I'm not mistaken, it was 2015 or 16, that time, when the Hungarians reinforced the southern border. Hungary faced a serious criticism for that, and still being criticized for that Hungary instrumentalize this issue in order to gain political leverage. Yes, migration is a topic that divides the political community, the expert community, civil societies in many countries. But in my opinion, various countries are variously or exposed to it on various levels. So, for example, Germany, which hosted enormous amounts of migrants or refugees, you choose the right term to use, because some are considered to be refugee, others considered migrants. They have a way bigger pressure on their social system than, for example, countries of Central Eastern Europe, right? So they have different policies and they have different burdens. So they have to deal with them in the countries. Other countries are dealing with them at their borders. So I think there is a need for a more, if not unified, but at least consulted migration policy that would take into consideration the capabilities of the economies, whether they can absorb such amount of people or they cannot absorb that amount of people, how to deal with it. Can we help them on the spot where they are, or we just decide to suck them up to the wealthier countries and then we can use them as labor force or not? So this is a huge topic on which, in my opinion, very bright minds have to work in order to get this thing right.
So actually, all these topics we are talking here, like Ukraine, migration, LGBTQ rights, all these topics are like conflict with Europe Union at the moment. Do you think that Hungary is like an EU outsider here?
I wouldn't call it outsider. I wouldn't even call it a reformer. I think it just, from Hungarian standpoint or from Hungarian point of view, is one of the sobering voices, I probably say, that calls for more realistic approaches in other issues that have to be dealt with. Again, I would go back to the very beginning of our conversation. Different places require different decisions. And I think the level of problems, the level of needs, and the level of approaches is different. For example, why would Portugal apply to the same fears to which fears, let's say, Finland is, right? If you're talking about Russia. Finland has Russia on its border. For Portugal, well, good luck reaching it.
Yeah. But actually, is there such a red line or something when Hungary would say goodbye, European Union?
At this point, I cannot see this type of the future. There are tangible and big benefits of being part of the European Union and being part of NATO. And I don't think that Hungarian society would be eager to leave both NATO or the EU. I think it also depends on how Hungary, for example, or countries like-minded will be treated. If the European Union will move towards sanctioning its member states for not behaving aligned with the others.
Hungary got some fines, right?
We got some fines, of course, but
Did
there's...
you pay them?
Well, of course, we do. Well, there's still a significant amount of EU funds that is still withdrawn.
Okay.
Part of it was released to Hungary. Now the other part has to be released sometime if the Hungarian government will be able to negotiate it. Yeah, there are some fines that are related to the migration, as we were speaking. Still, the economic interconnectivity and the economic ties with great European economies and the possibilities and advantages of the free market still makes it logical to stay. It, as I said, depends on how harsh they can be on the member states.
Do you think European Union may fall apart?
I hope it's not. I hope it's not.
Is it a good union?
Well, it has its advantages, and
But it has also lots of disadvantages, right?
well, there are disputes. And
From my perspective, let me tell you, if European Union is an economical union, everything is okay. But if it's like cultural union, where somebody in power tells you to apply these rights, to do this, to do that.
Exactly, that's where I wanted to go to. So I think the European Union as a platform for economic cooperation, as it meant to be, this is something that created or allowed Europe to flourish and to grow and to become what it is, right? A very attractive place for others, one of the strongest markets in the world, right? But we have to, in my opinion, determine or define what the purpose is. Is the European Union playing its own geopolitical games? Is it a geopolitical actor? Does it want to be a geopolitical actor? If so, then it's very hard to align 27 different opinions and 27 different approaches to have a unified sort of, let's say, geopolitical goal or aim, right? So there is a saying that we have to use everything for what it meant for, right? So I think the key issue is, or the key question is, whether we are using it for the purpose it was meant to be used. So I do believe that the economic cooperation and the benefits of free trade and free movement of capital, labor force, people is a huge blessing that we have, and I think the member states benefited from it. The other question is, where things are going now? Do we have like a Leviathan somewhere flying around against which we have to put our forces together, and then we have to give up all the ideas and interests that we have to serve that sole purpose? Or we can scratch our heads and say, hey, this thing is not very good for me. Why do I have to do what is good for you? Let's discuss it. Let's have a discussion. And I think the lack of dialogues and lack of discussions on the most problematic issues is not a productive or not a constructive approach.
Okay, Hungary still relies on Russian energy, and Trump now talks that he will fine countries which uses Russian energy. What you will do?
Well, that's, again, a good question, and I don't know how it can be applied, for example, to Hungary, because we have this, United Economic Realm area. So I don't know if there is a way to find sanctions on particular countries within the European Union. So as we were talking before, this is one economic union, right?
Yeah.
So it's very hard to pick one particular country over here. Well, I think that in this regard, countries that were allowed to extend the time of transition from Russian fossils to other sources of hydrocarbons may not be in this line. Hungary,
Maybe you will get ships from USA.
yeah, and then they're going to be dragged on the Danube through the Black Sea. Well, I would love to see that. Well, but if we go back to the serious element of our conversation, we are working on the diversification. So at this point, there's around 40% in our portfolio that's coming from Russia, and the rest is coming from other suppliers. We got a deal with Azerbaijan, and that provides us some gas from the south.
Actually, I think it's also Russian.
No, the Azerbaijani is actual Azerbaijan gas.
So.
Well, at least that's what we know.
Say.
That's what we know, because it goes down through Turkey, and then we have a direct pipeline from there, Turk Stream, through which we get the Russian gas. By the way, 60% of the Ukrainian gas imports come from Hungary, and most of that also comes from Russian gas.
Mm-hmm.
I believe so. So if we would cut that pipe, we would also cause problems for our neighbors in Ukraine as well. So we are trying to diversify, and we do work on interconnectors that would allow us to reach the seaports where LNG terminals can be. So, for example, we also have connections to Croatia, and we have some supply coming through the Croatian systems, but it's a bit more expensive. I mean, meaning the transit fees are not that cheap. So we are working on diversification. And I think that if it will reach this sanctioning of countries, I think the main targets will be those that allow the Russian economy run. And this is not Hungary that would probably keep the Russian economy standing. Just a number. I think once in a year, we use 11 billion cubic meters of natural gas. 11 billion cubic meters. I think the Chinese buying 200 billion a year. So those 4 billions that are coming through the Turk Stream, if that's not the amount because of which Russia's economy is standing.
Let's talk about our relationship as countries like Hungary and Lithuania. So actually, it seems that they clash a lot. Why? What's driving tension between our countries?
Well, as let's say, try to approach it from the logical point of view. In my opinion, Lithuania and Hungary has zero reasons to be in bad relations.
I think so too. Is it because of previous government?
I believe that the overall geopolitical environment and the geopolitical goals that are being followed by Lithuania, coming from their geographical position and historical ties and whatever, and the geopolitical persuasion and foreign political persuasion, economic interests of Hungary are different. And from these differences, the approaches, for example, to the same catastrophe that we experience today, the Russo-Ukrainian war, the full-scale invasion of Russia in Ukraine, brought us a little bit even more further. So the main conflict over here is the Hungarian approach to the conflict in Ukraine, the Hungarian approach to the policies within the EU, and previous to that,
all these topics we talked about.
The topics that we talked about, and previously the relations of the Budapest government with the Democrat administration in the United States. So these, I would call them knots of problems or crises, creates a different standing in the line where we are. So if we could reapproach the Hungarian-Lithuanian relations directly and would take out of the equation the various bigger geopolitical differences in our views, then maybe we could find the ways of cooperation. And there are ways of cooperation. For example, the 3 Cs initiative, which would allow us to be, again, on the one side, right, to work together on this project, or fostering the development of north-south infrastructure in Europe that would serve common goals. But for this, we have to look on what benefits us and then deal on our own way with our fears and our problems that we have on our borders, right?
So actually we had elections and the new political power now stepped in. Has something changed between Lithuania and Hungary relationships with previous government and this one?
I believe that there might be some nuances that can bring some improvements. I think if the new Lithuanian government will be more receptive to, I don't know, like to having people like I, for example, for some professional level or expert level discussions, we can get to the point where we at least will try to understand each other's position. I had a couple of meetings in May when I was here in Vilnius, and it was very interesting to see that when we have fundamentally different positions, but very limited knowledge on what we actually think, and then we started to unwrap each other's fears, interests, geopolitical positions, geographical positions, and the implications of that. We were like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, actually, that makes sense too. Yeah. But there are things that we have to. Yeah, of course. So, in my opinion, we have to try at least talk, not to necessarily solve all the problems, but at least to understand why those problems occurred, right? So we know what the what's, but we also need to know the whys. I think it would be also very helpful, for example, that if we would align our communication, for example, regarding Ukraine, right? There is a quite intense relationship between Hungary and Ukraine, which is seen often very hostile on the political communication level, but the interpersonal level or the cross-border cooperation or the humanitarian initiatives, they are working very well. As I mentioned, we are providing natural gas, electricity to Ukraine. There's also a serious amount of humanitarian aid going there. But this is not something that people are talking about. And maybe Lithuania, which has very good relations to Ukraine, very strong ties, maybe can also contribute to normalize these relations. But in my opinion, this will be a very hard task to perform and fulfill, because it would require Hungary and Lithuania be friends again, right? And I hope it will happen soon.
I hope podcasts like that will bring our countries closer to each other.
Let's hope so.
So actually, you have still very high tensions with Ukraine as a country,
Yeah, we do.
right? And Ukraine wants a seat on a European table, and Hungary has one of the keys for that. What does really Budapest really wants from Kyiv before it's ready to say yes for Ukraine Europe Union membership?
There's a line of issues.
Mm-hmm.
The initial problem.
This is possible.
If it's possible for Hungary to say
Just
that's
say yes.
okay.
Yeah.
Let me turn it around. Actually, Hungary was never really against the fact. It was against the accelerated procedure. Imagine
still corruption, everything.
Well, no. Imagine the situation that Hungary is very supportive towards the EU integration of the West Balkans. That were working on their reforms and they were adjusting their legislative system, and they were waiting for 17 years on the doorstep, and yet they're still nowhere. And then there's Ukraine, which unfortunately ran into this catastrophic war, which it suffers from, has the possibility to join very fast. And this is going back to the first question about, previous question about the European Union thing. So we clearly understand that this is a geopolitical decision, and it has a logic behind it. So there is a logic in it, because Ukraine has to gain something, right? Because it suffered so a lot. So then we have to decide whether we are doing things on geopolitical scene, or we are doing it on a Stockholm criteria, merit-based approach, and then we measure all these things. And Hungary is not the only country that did the veto. So Bulgaria, for example, was vetoing Macedonia to enter the European Union, and there was not some big things. It was like the Greeks were vetoing Macedonians to change their name, so they became like a very long name, right? The Bulgarians were vetoing to persuade Macedonia to give the position of the Bulgarians there as a state creating nations. So Hungary is not the first one who did that.
Yeah.
So, but sorry for being so long with that. In my opinion, if Ukraine will be ready on all the criteria that is needed to be part of the European Union, Hungary will welcome Ukraine in the European Union, because we would like to have a strong, economically prosper, inclusive, democratic Ukraine next door that would provide equal possibilities to develop for its minorities. But at this point, we have the sensation that from the assessment of Ukraine, we believe that the European Union itself is not ready to digest Ukraine. There are many issues that has to be tackled. Agricultural element of the accession, the borders, after all, where the Ukrainian borders. We know where they are as according to the international law, and this would be the normal thing. But where the war will end, what time and what money it will require to clean the Ukrainian soil from the contamination of explosive mines. This is a projects for tens of years, and we don't know how it will end up. So again, I would like to say that there's no hostility towards that, saying like, no, never. When it's ready, Ukraine, and when Europe is ready, then why not?
Sure. The war in Ukraine feels endless. Every side claims they'll win, but actually the ground tells another story. So from Hungary's view, how does this war really end?
Well, again, a very hard question.
I think we will redraw borders.
I don't think so that there will be any kind of recognition of the occupation of Ukrainian territories, and I don't think that Hungary would think differently in this matter. What I believe that, or what I suspect, that from point of view of the unsolvedness of this conflict, the best that we can get is a frozen conflict along the very long front line, which Lord knows how we will be able to control and to maintain as a ceasefire. And it will be a frozen, prolonged conflict. Many say that this can be the Korean scenario, but in Korean scenario, there were two states, right? Over here, we are not talking about this. We are talking about one state took over part of another state's territory, and this is now divided. I think it can be frozen, and then if the governments of Russia, United States, European capitals, Ukraine, will be able to settle a modus operandi in which they can coexist in a way, and then try to recalibrate this territorial dispute without hot phases of conflicts, and then maybe it will be solved after decades. At this point, I cannot see that one of the sides would collapse very fast. And not even collapse is not the right word. I don't see the capacity on neither side that would gain a decisive victory on the battlefield. That is true that the Russians have the upper hand. First of all, they have more resources, they have more men, they have their own arms production, which Ukraine does not. Ukraine is very dependent on foreign aid. And if the aid lacks, then Russia can advance. But again, Russian resources, manpower is also not infinite. And again, one question is to occupy, the other question is to keep it. To control it and to keep it. So I don't see that Russia has the capabilities to gain it. Russia is good at attrition war, and we see that it succeeds in that one. But what I hope that the killing would stop soon enough, because, Ukraine losing men, a lot of men, good men, the backbone of the society, basically, those who are capable of work, who could keep the economy running. And what I see now is that we just slowly bleed Ukraine out. And I don't think this is a good scenario for Ukraine. So, because, the biggest treasure of every country or every nation is the nation itself, the people.
Yeah, but I think that, Ukraine bleeds out. And if we want a peace, so both sides should negotiate and find a decision. And I think the decision will be with some loss of territories.
Well, that is for sure that Ukraine gonna suffer serious losses after, but it has already suffered losses. The territorial losses that you mentioned, they're very practical and they are already happening. The question is the recognition. So it might happen that the occupied territories will remain under Russian control.
That can be a part of ending a war.
It can, but we don't know. Because we tend to consider the war in Ukraine as the biggest crisis of the relations of Russia and the US, or Russia and the broader West. This is one of the symptoms of the crisis. And in my opinion, Russia is trying to push through this war some better conditions for itself, not only in Ukraine, but generally in the global affairs. So from this perspective, this is also very important to understand to which extent Russia can stretch and what she wants to get and where we can allow it to go, if we can allow at all, right? So Ukraine, in my opinion, is one of the harshest symptoms of the global crisis that we're witnessing. And in my opinion, Russia is seeing this crisis as a tool to improve its position in the global thing, which is not a good thing. It's not a good thing.
Okay, Sandor, thanks for a nice chat. Anything you want to say for Lithuanian viewers?
For Lithuanian viewers, well, thank you for listening to me. I hope I'm not pissed off anyone in the audience. And if I did, it was not my intention. I was just trying to give my views and opinions. And again, thank you for having me here. If the viewers would say that it was okay, I'm happy to come back again.
Ačiū, kad buvote su mumis laidoje Riba. Laida ir jos ištraukos patalpintos 77 platformoje ir kitose socialinės žiniasklaidos kanaluose bus prieinamos visiems šios informacijos beieškantiems. Nepagailėkite paspausti patinka ir pasidalinti nuorodą su tais, kurių tiesa nepasiekia. Laidoje kalbinome Sandor Seremet. Ačiū Jums ir iki susitikimo kitose laidose.